Hello and welcome to the Untranslatable Podcast. We are here recording episode 166, and today we are going to talk about round 2 of On the Road Again in Harbin, the ice city of China in the northeastern part of China. So in case you were curious and wanted to know more about Harbin, this is the episode for you. And I have to say I was fortunate enough to visit the Snow and Ice Festival, which we'll get to later. Sent Jared some poppin' pics to toss on the gram, so keep your eyes out for those, everybody. So without further ado, my partner in crime, my good buddy Jared. What's going on, Jared?
Hello. I saw those poppin' pics. They will be put up onto our Instagram, Untranslatable Podcast, Twitter, Untranslatable One. They probably won't be put up there. Well, maybe they will if I'm feeling friendly. Who knows? I guess I can do it. You can also
spread a little love
and give us some 5-star reviews on iTunes and Stitcher. We love that. We read them. We'd even read them here if you were to actually listen to me, you know. Wah. You can also see us on YouTube if you like. And you can see Chad in his various locations. And me in my same location, yet now for me it's morning, which is always lovely. A nice little change of pace. Chad, I watched American Factory as promised. I hope you did too.
I did.
And yes, you're on the road again in Harbin, but you're on the road again in Harbin again. So I also want to take some time to talk about this movie because I found this movie to be fascinating.
Absolutely.
So first, let me just give a quick explanation of what it is. It's called American Factory. It's on Netflix. It's a Chinese glass company that Fuyao that supplies automotive glass to a wide variety, 70% of the automotive market. So gigantic company, and they want to open operations in the United States, and they choose a recently closed down GM factory. They bought it. Fuyao bought it. Mm-hmm. And they chose this factory to be the location of their first American office.
In Dayton, Ohio.
Dayton, Ohio. And so what they do is they put out, they put out a bunch of ads for new jobs, but they also give first go to the displaced GM workers. A lot of people used to work at the GM factory, just got let go when the plant closed, obviously. And so they get a chance to work at this factory too. And GM, much like most of the U.S. car companies, or all of the U.S. big 3 car companies, are known for having great labor situations, and part of a union, the UAW, which is a huge automotive union in the United States. And so it's a very good place. It's known as a very good sort of American wage job to get to actually support your family and have a pretty good life. So these people are coming back to So Fuyao is coming back. It's a Chinese-managed company. So Fuyao brought about 100 or 200, I believe, Chinese workers with them. At
first 100, and then they increased it to 200, I believe, yeah.
Some of them were also just line workers. Some of them were executives and managers. And the Chinese were separately getting trained on the cultures of the U.S., how to work in the United States, how to train American workers, how to what you can do in America that you can't do in China. And so so that's just a background of the movie, but I wrote down a lot of notes, and we can just go through some of these because I'd like to get your opinion, but there's a lot I want to talk about, and I don't even know how to do it in a structured manner because my brain's all over the place. So I wrote down some quotes, and these are in order. So America is so this is at the very beginning when Fuyao was first coming to the United States, and they're training the first batch of Chinese workers, excuse me. There's a Chinese trainer speaking to the workers saying, "America is a place to let your personality run free. Cars are big and comfortable. You can even joke about the president and not get in trouble. Americans dress comfortably and aren't concerned with appearance. It represents their casualness. Americans are direct and don't have anything to hide." So it kind of sounds nice. You're like, all right, the way you're saying it's a little weird, but it's essentially saying you're freer. You can come here and you don't have to be so concerned about how you're carrying yourself. You don't have to, like, essentially, as we've talked about here, this whole idea of saving face doesn't really exist here in the U.S. is essentially what he's saying.
Right.
And so it's
can I explain
great.
saving face real quick for our listeners who aren't familiar with that concept if they haven't been to China real quick? So the idea of face in China, it's all about relationships and your kind of reputation amongst your coworkers or peers or whatever. And so, there are plenty of things you can do them in China, but it's definitely not looked at in a very positive light, which then causes you or your coworkers to lose face, which is a very negative thing here, and people really try to avoid it. So yeah, I also found that very interesting in the beginning of the documentary. Have you
found yourself carrying yourself noticeably different than maybe you would in the Czech Republic or the United States, especially around people in general, because of this whole save face thing?
I try to be careful with what I say to my students and how I say it. I don't want my message to be interpreted incorrectly. But it's much different than, I think, the way that these factory workers are interacting together. It's very different, especially the idea of hierarchy and communicating with your peers. I don't really have that much contact with a lot of higher-ups at the university just because they're very busy, and at the same time, too, it's just a completely different environment being a teacher in China than working in a factory in Dayton, Ohio with Chinese workers. But it's a fascinating documentary, Jared, and let's talk a little bit more about it.
So the way they set it up at this factory, I'll give the Chinese people this. They did make a point to try to get these American and Chinese workers to intermingle together and work together.
They did.
So what they did, the Chinese were essentially also kind of the trainers of the Americans because everyone from China had been doing this job at the Fuyao factory in China for a while. And so what they did was they set Americans up with Chinese and with Chinese workers up with Americans, I should say. And they were doing training. And the chairman of the company, CEO as we might call it here, would come periodically to the American factory, and one of the Chinese execs would walk around with him and explain how everything's going. And he was saying to him this first time when he was coming, the Americans are pretty slow. They have fat fingers.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I was laughing. I heard that.
And he also said he said some of them sort of have struggles understanding how to properly do the job. And the chairman just said to them, okay, just make sure you don't upset them. It's that whole just like, make sure you tell them what they want to hear still because they need to be treated a special kind of way. It's weird because the relationships between, I'm sure you'll agree with this, the relationship between the Americans and the Chinese is both heartwarming at times and also especially cringeworthy. I'll give you an example of a heartwarming too, because I'm going to give you a lot of cringeworthy examples coming up soon. But for example, at the very close to the beginning, when the Chinese workers were new there, they went to a local lake and they were all fishing, and there are also a lot of local Ohio people there fishing as well. And two of them, they were coworkers and stuff. And one of the guys was trying to make conversation, explain to him certain things about the culture, explain to him he's talking about Wheaties, the cereal, and obviously the Chinese guy didn't know what Wheaties was.
Yeah, exactly.
But that was kind of a heartwarming moment. He was trying to explain to him some customs, and the Chinese guy was trying to understand, and it was like, look at them trying to, yeah, the cultures are different. Yeah, they can't really understand each other, but they're trying to make a relationship. How heartwarming. And so stuff like that was nice.
The other one I really liked, Jared, was, I forget the Chinese worker's name now, but he went with the old Ron, I think was the dude's name. The
guy that owned the horses and stuff.
Yes, and Ron invited him and other Chinese colleagues over for Thanksgiving. They had Thanksgiving together, and then he took him out back to shoot guns, and he showed some pictures on his phone of these Chinese dudes with these guns. And oh man, it was so funny. But the thing was that I really liked about watching that was that I do think there is a level of, and I really liked that how they juxtaposed some of the different Chinese viewpoints on working with the Americans, because the one Chinese guy who was close friends with Ron said that they were like brothers, they were like family. He has my back, I have his.
Yes.
And the Chinese guy, I'm so sorry I forgot his name, but he said a lot of positive things about working in the States and working with Americans. The only thing that he really said was that he missed his family back home in China, which is understandable.
Right.
I definitely caught some feels when that scene came on, because I, of course, obviously miss my friends and family as well. But anyways,
and
it was
interesting. Like, I was going to bring that up later, but that is an interesting thing about this, about that I didn't realize was seems like pretty commonplace for Chinese people to leave their families to work.
Yep.
Like even at the Chinese Fuyao plant, it's either in Shanghai or Beijing, some big city.
No, it's in Fujian, I believe.
Oh, it is? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, it's in some city, and the vast majority of the workers we heard from were talking about how they don't see, like, if they're lucky, they see their family twice a year, but usually it's only going to be around like the Chinese New Year time,
which is happening
when
right
they
now.
can actually see their family. And so so a lot of these people that we were listening to are probably seeing their family right now. But
Right.
but there's no, like, it seems like it's sort of a good chance that you're going to have to leave your family to work. And it's also interesting, once again, I'm speaking more similar to these Ohio people than these Chinese people, obviously. But, like, I don't understand the concept also of, so you're married, you have 2 kids, yet you're also, like how did you get to that place while also working a job that's away from people? Or how did you not have a job and get to this level of family, then move away? Like, I don't understand how this happens so commonly.
Well, Jared, I'm going to assume that the family probably came first, because at least depending on how old they are, and this is one thing I've noticed here in China, is that I am terrible about guessing people's age. Like, I was, in Harbin, I was doing a teaching workshop, and one of the teachers I was working with, she asked me how old I was, and I said, "Oh, I'm 28." And she, "Oh, you're a young man." I looked at her. I thought she was like maybe 35. She was 45. So I'm terrible with telling age here in China. But the thing is I think in terms of Chinese culture, a lot of Chinese people are married and have children at a fairly young age. Most of them, I would say before 25. So if you are interviewing anybody in their 30s or older, they probably got married, had a kid or two, and then maybe found that job and started working. So that would probably be how that came about. But another thing that I found interesting too, Jared, was that the Fuyao company wanted the American plant to have the same standards as the Chinese plant in terms of output, in terms of everything like that. Which on one hand, on a business and financial standpoint, I totally get. You don't want to have. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, for sure. That totally makes sense. And if you're making another plant, like, yeah, you'd obviously think there's some growing pains, but you'd also think, all right, same size plant, same number of people, we should be able to shoot for the same amount of output. Like, that kind of makes sense business-wise. Sorry, go ahead. That's all I was disagreeing with you.
Business-wise, definitely. But I think the cultural implications, the work standards, like, it was funny how the Chinese workers in the States were complaining, like, how dare these Americans take Saturday and Sunday off? You know, they should be coming in on Saturdays or Sundays. And then I remember one of the Chinese guys in one of the meetings said, well, why can't we force them to do overtime? And it's like, well, in the States, you can't. And if they do overtime, in theory, you should be getting paid more as well. And so it was really interesting to see how that the Chinese spin on American work standards kind of played out throughout the film, which I found very, very interesting. It was a really, really enjoyable film to watch. Very interesting documentary.
So part of them trying to, like, force them. So what they also did was Fuyao brought the sort of the higher ups of the American higher ups. None of them were quote unquote executives. They're all sort of supervisors or managers, but still factory workers. So
Right.
I don't want to get the idea that they invited a bunch of suits there. But they invited a bunch of higher ups from American higher ups to the Chinese factory. One, as a welcome to the company, and two, to show like as a tour through their factory to see how can they improve the productivity. Because at this point, everyone was aware that the American Fuyao factory was underperforming, way below what they were expecting, and so there was one American guy. I don't know if he started at the China Fuyao and just happened to move back to America, or if he was just an American guy from Dayton that happened to speak Chinese, or if they specifically hired an American in America that could speak Chinese to be a liaison or something. But anyway, It was an American guy that spoke Chinese, and I don't know if he knew the culture, and this is why he was saying this, or if he actually believed this. But he was speaking to simplify it, he was speaking like a Chinese person, and I say this to mean that he was speaking to another one of the Chinese people, he was speaking to a Chinese factory worker that works in China, explaining his struggles, saying that like we can't get them to work hard. One, they like to chit chat a lot. They always complain about wanting to have breaks. They and he's like, only if we could get duct tape and put it over their mouth. And the Chinese guy's like, oh, are we allowed to do that? And he's like, no, that's illegal.
Right.
He's like, no, we can't do that. But the American guy was like talking to like, oh yeah, we're so lazy, and it's like, I don't know if he's just doing this because he knows that like he's doing what the Chinese people are saying to do to us.
Saving face,
just tell them what they want to hear.
Yep.
And I just wonder, I was like, yeah, he's American, but he also must know the culture because clearly he speaks fluently enough to understand the culture. So I didn't know that, but I found that very interesting. And another thing, speaking of the conditions in China, you could see how they could be so much more productive because they were bypassing a lot of work standards that we have here in the U.S. with how much time you can work, vacation, injuries.
Right.
What happens if people get injured? If someone got injured in a Chinese plant, they just fired them, and got
Did they
someone
say
else.
that in the movie? Are you sure about that?
Yeah, I'm 100% sure of that. I remember they did fire people that got injured.
Did they? I don't remember that. Okay.
I feel like they did.
Okay.
Regardless, if you had any, let me put it this way:
do that too, though, as well.
If you had any complaints, they fired you. I'll say that, and we'll get to that in a second. But also when they were in China, like there was a place where they had all the recycled glass, and there were just a bunch of people whose entire job all day was to sit in the glass with they had gloves that were not like rip resistant, and they were wearing no facial protection, just sorting glass, which was according to the Americans, a huge safety violation, which makes sense. I mean, it seems pretty dangerous. So, then another thing that was interesting was when they were in the factory in China and they were assembling the Chinese workers to like explain. I don't know why they were assembling them. But they assembled them like they were in the military, and they were like standing to attention, sort of turning left and right and clicking their feet like they were in the military. And they were like, what's our goal? And they're like, productivity. And like, what's our goal? Like to, be the best glass maker in China or whatever. And it's just, and I found that very interesting. And it's like dismissed. And, it's this very military-esque.
And then they tried to do that in the States, just have like a lineup morning meeting.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
And none of them were paying attention. They were like,
they're all just leaning up against the wall, like not saying anything, not responding to him.
Right.
Also, he was kind of like so passive about it too. He's like, all right, guys, come on, let's try something new. Let's gather around. None of the Chinese managers would ever speak like that. They would be way more authoritative than that.
Well, I think there's a different respect here in China for hierarchy.
You think? You didn't get that in the movie?
But yeah, the movie though to me was really fascinating just to see the two different cultures and kind of how what Americans' ideas of Chinese workers in China were and vice versa. What I thought was really interesting was when they finally hired a Chinese guy to be the president of the American plant, and how he said we are going to offer the best worker a fully paid trip to Shanghai. And it was really funny because it's like these are like lower middle class workers from Ohio that probably don't know anything about China, let alone Shanghai. And he was like, yeah, we're going to put you up in this fancy hotel. No one even looked excited. And I mean, I've been to Shanghai. It's an amazing city, but
I mean, it wasn't really like I understand what they were doing, but they were bringing one person, and they gave everyone a $3 raise, which they were making half of what they made when they worked at GM. So a $3 raise is not that big of a deal. Yeah, it's great because any money is more money. They'll take it.
Right.
But then like it all seemed like so empty and half-hearted of
True.
So hold on, you're getting ahead of yourself a little bit. There's one more thing about the first China trip I wanted to talk about. Was the second part of that trip was the welcome to
party?
Our company part where they did the party, and that is that made me feel really weird. That was another mix of heartwarming and cringeworthy. Now those performances were the most cringeworthy things I've ever seen in my life. So there were singing performances, there were dancing performances, there were light shows, all of them about Fuyao and how to be a productive, successful company. Did you notice that?
Yeah,
where
of
it's like
course I noticed
Fuyao is the best glass manufacturer in China. We strive for innovation, 0%, huge profits, and like it was all just these like songs about being the best company and hating your targets and. And I was like, this is so cringeworthy. And I felt this weird mix of cringeworthy was also when they had the Americans go on stage and do the YMCA. I kind of felt like
telling me you didn't do the YMCA, because when I heard I was doing the
I kind of felt like they were laughing at them and making it didn't feel like they were laughing with them. It felt like they were laughing at them. And I also felt a weird mix of heartwarming and a little cringeworthy during when that one guy was going around at the end of the party saying like, we're one family, this is great for our cultures to come together. That was beautiful. He clearly felt like he meant it. I just didn't feel like anyone gave a shit about the guy and meant it back to him. They were saying it back to. I felt like I was like, dude, these people don't give a shit about you. Is how I felt when he was doing that, and it was a bummer because he felt very welcomed, and I was like, they're just doing this to. It all felt like manipulation to me. It all felt like manipulation.
Interesting. Okay, I don't know if I'd go that far.
Well, for example, Chad. When they started talking about unionizing, it turned into this sick game. So
That's
the
true.
Americans were talking about, we're starting to get really fed up because the injuries were going up a lot. They were expected to work longer hours and have really no repercussions for saying no because there was no union. And where conditions were unsafe, there was, they work with glass, so there are a lot of very hot environments. And and so they were trying to unionize, and they wanted to make more money too, obviously. And the Chinese executives were all very against it, and they hired a labor relations company to come in and try to convince people not to do it and try to tell them why unions were actually worse for you than better for you. And one of the supervisors, one of the Chinese supervisors, remember this? This guy was a real slimy motherfucker. This guy, he was talking about how we can't have unions, and he's like, "Look at this guy. This guy is a pretty good guy. We took a pic, and he showed a picture on a phone of the two of them smiling and arm, and he's like, "This guy's a great guy. I met his family, and and he'll be gone in 2 weeks." Yeah. And whenever the chairman was there, and the Chinese executives were giving walkthroughs, all it was just this guy's too slow. We're getting rid of him. We found a way to automate this better. We're getting rid of this person. They're talking about unions in here. We're trying to squash that. If not, we'll get rid of them. Like, it was all just avoiding unions and how to get these people to fall in line. And there was no respect at all. Right. And I don't know. It was
and
I know
culture,
I feel like you're trying to be nice. I feel like you're trying to be nice here because one, you're in China right now, and because you're just a nice person. But it felt so gross to me. It felt really gross to me.
But dude, I think corporate America is also like that too. I think any large corporation has similar things. Maybe not as extreme.
Sure.
But yeah, I thought
can
it
I
was
read?
really yeah. Go
Just
ahead.
one more quote that from the Chinese people that they were saying this to in one of their meetings about how they need to like get the Americans to fall in line. Mm-hmm. We need to use our wisdom to guide them and help them because we are better than them. That was a direct quote, by the way.
Yeah, that made me cringe.
So just stuff like that, I was just like, man, I don't know.
Yeah,
and it was weird.
An interesting documentary.
It was, and it was interesting to see that like it almost seemed like it was an even more extreme example of culture shock than if you were to just be like on vacation there, even, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, for sure.
Because you have like such a close interaction with these people and such an intimate style of interaction. And you guys both are doing jobs that you feel like you know how to do for years. And it's just like, why won't these people? Another thing that they brought up too was that the Chinese people would call Americans foreigners in the American plant.
Yeah. But that's just what they do. And there was so much of this documentary that I could relate to being a foreigner in China, being an American in China, which is that, yeah, if you aren't Chinese, you will be called a foreigner. And for them, I don't think it really matters if they're in America and technically they're the foreigners. It's a Chinese company, you know, and I think a lot of the Americans did lack some of the cultural sensitivity to it.
Sure.
And I think there was kind of this us versus them mentality on both sides, which I thought was kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. There were a few people that didn't have that kind of hostility, but I think a lot of them did.
Yeah.
One thing, Jared, that I thought was hilarious about the movie, and then I think we should move on so we can talk about some other stuff today on today's episode. But one thing I thought was really funny was the CEO saying, you know, do I really need to come here once a month? It's really tiring for me. Mm-hmm. And there are numerous shots of him just sitting in like a private jet. Like, sure, buddy, like it's got to be so tiring for you, you know, coming in a private.
Speaking of him, now one last thing about him to finish this out. He did have it did end with a monologue spoken by him about how he feels as in his position, because he talked about how he grew up super poor. You know, he grew up in a village that used to be just sort of rural, and now like a lot of Chinese cities has just been ultra industrialized, and he knows that the point, like he continually talks about the point of living is to work. That's how he feels.
Yeah.
But you know, he almost feels like he somehow found himself as a powerful executive. He's like, I don't know if I even like what I do or myself for doing what I do. It's just I have to work, and somehow me having to work has found me in this position where and he's like, am I going to look back and be proud of myself? He's like, I don't know. He's like, but I can't stop. That I felt sorry for, and I think that's something that is a great way to finish the movie, because Americans and Chinese, I think, can agree with that. Like we both have different styles of it, but I think we both prioritize workaholism in an unhealthy way, just in different ways.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. But check it out, American Factory on Netflix. It's a really interesting look at two cultures trying to come together, work together. It's really fascinating. So thank you, Jared, for recommending it.
Thanks for watching
Professor Jared's homework, and I'm glad I did. It was really interesting. Really, really interesting. Well, Jared, this kind of leads smoothly, I guess, into our shout-out for today, because my shout-out for today actually does go out to
Spread a little
China.
Love.
Because here in China, they are banning and having tons of restrictions on the production, sale, and use of single-use plastic products.
Good.
So the country is trying to tackle one of the country's biggest environmental problems. There are vast amounts of untreated plastic waste buried in landfills or dumped in rivers. And the United Nations has identified single-use plastics as one of the world's biggest environmental changes. So the goal here, Jared, in case you want some numbers, I know sometimes you're kind of a numbers guy, so here you go, Jared. All of China's major cities by the end of 2020,
Don't mean to hit that.
That's okay, will ban single-use plastics, and then in all cities and towns in 2022, markets selling fresh produce however, will be exempt from the ban until 2025. So I'm sure they'll be trying to find another way that they can still sell produce. Other items such as plastic utensils from takeaway food outlets and plastic courier packages will also be phased out. And by the end of this year, the restaurant industry will be banned from using single-use straws as well. So the goal here by 2025 as well is that towns and cities across China must reduce the consumption of single plastic use items in the restaurant industry by 30%. So obviously you can't feasibly eradicate single-use plastics overnight, but they are taking steps for the future to do this. So I think that's really great. Lots of love to China for trying to be more environmentally friendly. I think that's really great. So, Jared, I think you know what time it is.
I do. This is the Untranslatable Owl, everyone, signifying that it's time for some untranslatables. Now, I'm going to start with one real quick, just because this is a fun untranslatable from the movie American Factory, used to explain a great way to get along with Americans. Now I don't have the Chinese for it or anything. I just donkeys like being touched in the direction their hair grows. You should touch donkeys in the direction their hair grows. Otherwise, they'll kick you. I just thought that was funny. It's like essentially saying don't rub the Americans the wrong way. And this is what we kept talking about and going back to is just tell them what they want to hear. Tell them what they want to hear. Yeah, we'll do whatever we want later, but it's just easier if you just make them happy now.
Right. I would say we have an English untranslatable. Don't ruffle any feathers.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't ruffle any feathers. Yeah, that was kind of funny. When I heard that, that also kind of made me think of, that's kind of an interesting untranslatable. So I'll start you off with a Chinese one today, Jared. So this is, let's see here. Yi wu so yo, which means literally to not own a thing in the world.
Is it like to have no F's given kind of thing? Don't care?
Not quite.
Or like I'm free? Or it's like you don't have any worries?
I would say this is a negative one.
To be broke?
Not even to be broke, but literally just to feel like you don't have anything in the world. You're just kind of at the very bottom.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
My first one is Danish. Now, as I'm looking at this, I probably should have prepared to put it into a translator because this is a rough one. But, okay. Fjordvelen vreskope.
Sounds good to me.
Thank you. Before the devil puts his shoes on.
Before the devil puts his shoes on. Is this like, don't procrastinate? Like, just go do it. Like, don't wait for the right moment. Just go do it.
No, but I can say you're going on the right track. If you want to avoid procrastinating or being too late for something, you would start before the devil puts his shoes on.
So like to be a leg up on someone?
No, it's the time of the day.
Oh, early in the morning.
There you go.
Early in the morning. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The early bird gets the worm, people.
Yes.
Well, Jared, I have an Indonesian Abasa phrase for you, and it is hangat-hangat tai ayam, which means warm like chicken poo.
Oh, I've said this one before, but I don't remember it now. I have no idea, and I definitely have said this one before, and I already. What is it? Oh, hold on. Let me take a guess. Is it like it's like is it like fresh? It's like something just happened, or it's like
you're getting there. Yeah, you're very close.
Or it's like you just like it. I don't know. It's.
So, Jared, it's basically, I don't know how to give you an example, so I'm just going to tell you what it is. It's a person, to describe a person who's excited to do something at the beginning or when it just starts, but then you quickly lose interest and heart.
Oh, okay. So chicken poo doesn't stay warm for long, I imagine.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. My last one is Basque. As Careko Begiratu. To look with the left eye. See, I don't like this because I'll give you a clue. It's left eye slander. It's not left eye slander. It's left
It's lefty
slander.
slander.
It's in the sense that it's not something positive.
Is
To
it
look
like
with the
to
left
give-
eye.
Is it to like look at someone disapprovingly?
Why would you look at them disapprovingly?
Because they're stealing, they're doing something bad.
Maybe they stole something from you 12 years ago, and it doesn't even affect you anymore.
It's to hold a grudge. It's to hold a grudge.
There you go.
Okay, nice. Nice. Well, Jared, let's talk about Harbin, since I was on the road again, back in Harbin again, one of the coldest cities in China. And I tell you what, man, it was a great time. I was there Friday through Sunday, took a flight from Beijing, and flight was about 2 hours, slept on the plane almost the whole ride, so that was really nice. And got in, and I think the day I landed, it was about -5 or -10.
Whew.
So it was
Celsius.
a little chilly. Yes.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so Friday, I just caught up with some colleagues, and we had dinner. I don't even remember what we had for dinner now.
American colleagues.
Yes, American
Okay.
colleagues. But we did walk around. The main street. It's called Central Street in Harbin, which was absolutely beautiful. They had ice sculptures all up and down the street, which was pretty awesome to see. Lots of people. I had one thing that I mentioned on our last Harbin episode. When you go there, you have to they have these like homemade popsicles. They're like all sorts of flavors, but because it was so busy, they only had vanilla flavor and coffee flavor. And since I had vanilla last time I was there, I went for the coffee flavor. And oh my gosh, dude, it was so good. But it feels weird eating a popsicle outside in minus freezing degree weather. But it was delicious, man. It was like a frozen mocha latte. It was so tasty. So that was really fun. Yeah.
So you went to, just as a quick reminder for me and the listeners, you recently, not relatively recently, did a on the road again in Harbin. What did you just do the first time? Just a rough overview of what you did the first time.
Yeah.
You were there to present.
So the first time I was there to do a teaching workshop with a high school in Harbin, and this time we did a workshop for any teachers. It was through the consulate in Shenyang, which is another city near Harbin where they have a U.S. consulate, and the event was put on. It's free for Chinese teachers to attend.
Oh, cool.
And we provide them with workshops, materials, other stuff. And it was just a lot of fun. It was a long day. I woke up at 6:30. I didn't go to bed until fairly late. I got done with work and everything about 5 o'clock, but then we went to the ice festival, which I love my job. I love working with teachers, but I would be lying to you, Jared, and I would be lying to the listeners if I didn't say that the ice festival was definitely the highlight of the trip. Because
I can imagine that.
I saw
those
something
pictures.
else. Yeah, so let me paint a picture for our listeners out there who don't follow us on Instagram, although you should, Untranslatable Podcast on Instagram, to see these pictures. I will tell you this, though, Jared. I don't care if you have the new iPhone Pro, iPhone 11 Pro or whatever. I don't care if you have a fancy camera. Pictures does not do the Ice Festival justice. I mean, they look beautiful in the pictures.
Can you hold on 1 second? I have to answer this. I'm sorry. It's for my...
Yep.
Hello, Jared Miner. I missed it. I'm sorry. It's for my freaking... I bought a mattress, and they're delivering it. I missed it anyway. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry. Keep going. They did not do it justice. Why not?
The pictures just don't, because you don't see the vividness of the lights. And the other thing is, too, is a lot of these... So all these buildings you see are literally built out of ice. They're built out of blocks of ice.
This is like the size of a normal building.
The size of a castle. They had legit ice castles. Yeah, it was crazy. And the lights change color. They had speakers in all the lights, so they had music going on too. It was quite the experience.
Do you know how they build it?
So, well, I know this. I know that the way they get the ice is they get blocks from a couple different rivers in China. Now, how they actually construct them, I'm not sure, but they're clean cut blocks of ice. It's really impressive to see it up close. It's really something else. And I paid 290 RMB to get in. I will tell you, I made a mistake and didn't buy tickets beforehand. Not that I think the price changes, because I don't think it does, but the lines were crazy. I was lucky enough to be with a colleague of mine who she had a Chinese contact who was able to get us like VIP tickets so we could go through the line, but it was the same price. So 290 RMB for our American listeners out there is $42. And honestly, man, I think it was worth every cent. Yes, I froze my butt off because it was freezing and we were outside for over 2 hours in that cold. And this is a type of cold there that it's like cold in your bones. Like you feel it everywhere.
It's comparable to Michigan? Colder, would you say?
Colder. Definitely colder.
Okay. That's saying something then.
I was with a couple coworkers of mine, and one of my coworkers is the real MVP. Shout out to my colleague Jay. She had like those like warming packets, you know, that you can put in your pockets or like in your gloves or something. We put those on the bottom of our feet and then put them back into our boots. And I do think it helped a little bit.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, because you're walking on snow and ice.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a good pair of winter boots?
I have my like Nike Air Force boot sneaker.
So no
things.
Is the answer.
So they're not great.
Do you have good socks?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Super warm
Okay.
Costco socks. Had my thermal undies on. Had layers. That's right. Came to Harbin without a scarf, so I bought a scarf at H&M. That was definitely a good call. Definitely a good call. But yeah, it was so beautiful, man. I mean, these are legit ice castles. It's so crazy.
Right.
And then they had ice sculptures. And the ice sculptures were actually, we found out it was a competition. So every year they have a competition. So some of the sculptures are submitted from different countries. So we saw a few of them from Russia, some from Mongolia, some from China. Yeah.
So they build them there, obviously. They're not shipping them.
Right. I don't know how you would ship, because, I mean, we saw this ice sculpture from Mongolia that was this woman's face. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Let me see if I can. I don't know if I sent you all the pictures. I have quite a few of them. So let me see here.
Is this one where it looks like it's on a wave or something?
That's one of them. Yeah, that was one from Russia. That one was from Russia. Let me see if I can find the other one, though. There was one of them. Oh, man, maybe I didn't take it.
So what did you do the first time you were in Harbin? I know, in your free time.
In my free time, I didn't have much free time because I had.
Oh, was that where you didn't even do anything? We just talked about the games and stuff?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I thought that was Xi'an.
Oh, Xi'an. Well, Xi'an was also like that too, because I was doing I was doing a workshop. So I don't see the picture. That's too bad, because there was a really cool picture of this one ice sculpture that was like a woman's face. And they had even the details of, like, you know how like lips have lines in them? If you look really closely, they even had those in there.
Damn.
Everything. It was really crazy, just the detail that some of these ice sculptures had. They had other stuff too. Like they had this slide that was like, they had throughout the ice festival, they had 12 different slides. And when you came in at the entrance, you could buy little really crappy plastic sleds that all the kids were getting pulled around by their parents, which looked like a lot of fun. So yeah, it was really quite an experience. And I think if you ever are in China during the wintertime, it's well worth checking out the Harbin Ice Festival. It really is something else. It's immaculate. It's beautiful. Every year they have a different theme. Based on what I saw, I think it's just castles was the theme this year, but I'm not really sure.
Was it
they
packed?
had a train. It was busy, but I'm not sure if we went on the busiest day. I'm not sure when the busiest day is. But it's also huge.
Right.
I mean, it's easily over, for our American listeners out there, it's easily over 2 or even 3 football fields. I mean, it's huge.
Hey, I have is air quality better during winter, or is it less likely that there's going to be a super low air quality warning during winter when it's cold out. Does that affect it, the cold?
Oh, the air quality was terrible. Absolutely.
Okay, so the cold has nothing to do with it.
Well, so the cold, the temperature itself does not, but the cold causes more people to burn heat, which a lot of places here in China, they use either gas or coal. So that will definitely make the air pollution significantly worse. That's for sure. So the air quality definitely wasn't good. I could tell when I landed from the airport. It was crazy. But let me give you...
Did you have your mask on?
I had my mask with me. I wore it when we were out, but I didn't wear it inside. I feel weird wearing it inside.
I mean, you can't. What are you going to present with that thing on?
Exactly. Look like Bane giving my teaching presentation. I don't think that would be good.
Welcome.
So yes, if you want to learn more about English teaching, I can't do the Bane voice good enough. But yeah, you get the idea. But the interesting thing though, Jared, is there's actually 3 winter festival venues, and I only was able to go to one. So I went to Ice and Snow World, which was awesome. It's internationally famous, and it's incredibly colorful at night. Now, there are 2 other ones, though. There is Sun Island Scenic Area, but these are actually snow sculptures, and it's only open during the daytime. And then you also have Shaolin Park, which has about 1,000 ice sculptures and ice lanterns as a part of a competition. You can visit that one in the nighttime as well. But it's definitely worth a visit. I want to give you and the listeners, though, Jared, just some fun facts and some information about Harbin, because it's a really cool city. And if I'm here again next year, I definitely am hoping to go back there again. I love the food. I love the people. Ooh, let me send you a picture of my food. I had, on my way out at the airport, I had some very traditional Harbin meal. I'll send it your way right now. But it's the food's really good. It's like this sweet and sour pork. It's almost like, Jared, if you took a pork schnitzel and you cut it in smaller pieces, and then put like this like really good like kind of vinegar sauce on it. That's what you'll get. So that was my meal at the airport. And then I had some broccoli and carrots and some fried rice and some good old Harbin beer. So check that out. Sent that your way, Jared.
Oh, yeah. That looks great.
Super tasty. So I really love the cuisine there.
This looks right up your alley. And mine, too, for that matter.
Yeah, super good.
Are you getting better with chopsticks?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Slowly but steadily. Yeah. We're getting there. But anyways, so I want to give you and the listeners some fun facts about Harbin. So Harbin does have the biggest winter festival in the world. And some of the biggest sculptures, ice sculptures, are about 50 meters tall. And there are 10 to 15 million visitors every year going to see these. And the ice and snow sculptures obviously are created by thousands of people, and they're really, really amazing. And the International Ice and Snow Festival, which is what I saw, is the #1 ranked ice festival in the world to see. So definitely check that out. And so what's interesting is the tallest hollow ice tower was built in January 2018, and it was 102 feet tall.
Jeez, that's crazy. Yeah. Did they win? They better have won.
Yeah. I think so. Harbin is the world's coldest big city, at least according to the source that I found here.
Interesting.
Which I'm not so sure about that. I feel like there's got to be cities in Russia that are colder, but I could be wrong. But that's what this website says.
I'd be interested to know their criteria, but it's probably fair to say it's one of the coldest big cities.
Well, we can say this, Jared. This is probably a safer thing to say, that Harbin is one of the top 5 coldest cities in the world. Oh, this is what makes it different, Jared. The coldest big city is the fact that there are 10 million people living there. So I guess I would say that's probably accurate. With 10 million people, it's the coldest city. That would make sense. The region's population is about the same size as that of Chicago. To give you all some perspective. Now, Harbin, though, used to be a European and actually a foreign city. Harbin was a Russian town in 1895, and it was to serve the construction of a Russian-financed railway. And then during the war against Japan in 1905, it was a Russian military base. After the 1917 revolution, about 100,000 Russians fled to the city. So in its heyday, in the early 1920s, there were about 120,000 Russians living there.
Can you?
And then there were also, yeah?
Can you see any sort of Russian, signs of Russia there?
Oh, yeah. All over. The church that is still standing there, which is a beautiful church, I believe it's called Sophia is the name of the church, and it is Russian style for sure. And that's also worth seeing at night. It's really beautiful. I believe the first time I was there, I sent you pictures of that. Yeah, St. Sophia Church. But there's a lot of other Russian style architecture there. There are even Russian style like souvenir shops and gift shops, Russian restaurants. Russian food is delicious. So yeah. And what's also interesting about Harbin, Jared, is that it had a very large Jewish community as well. In the 20th century, Harbin had one of the largest Jewish communities in the Far East. In the 1920s and 30s, there were about 20,000 Jewish people who were mainly Russian who lived in the city during the Jewish community's height. So that's kind of cool. Very interesting. Apparently, the best ski park as well in China is not in Harbin, but very near Harbin. It's about 2.5 hours away. But you can get a car.
Would you be willing to check it out? Do you know how to ski?
I'm not a big skier. I used to snowboard, but I'm not a big skier or snowboarder, to be honest. Also, make sure if you visit Harbin, you bring lots of layers, lots and lots and lots of layers, because it gets very cold. I was there in November, and it was already about freezing. So yeah, and one tip, I guess, that some people say is actually to wear dark colors so you can absorb sunlight for added warmth. So that's kind of interesting. I didn't know that.
You never heard that before?
I haven't, no.
Oh,
Nope.
yeah. I mean, it's the same, I think that's why a lot of people in the Middle East wear white as well, for the opposite reason, because it doesn't absorb as much heat.
Makes sense. Right, makes sense. But yeah, Harbin is an amazing city. The Ice Festival is well worth a visit. So check it out. Check out our Instagram, Untranslatable Podcast, for pictures of that. I'll double check too, Jared, and send you any that I haven't sent you.
Okay.
Just so you've got them all, because there are some good ones.
Yeah.
But like I said, the pictures really don't do it justice. They
I can imagine.
really don't.
Some of them look like legitimate build. Like at first, I thought there was somehow I was like, is there like ice over a building? Like, is that like a parliament building that they put ice over?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, those are
so
awesome.
crazy.
All right,
Yeah.
let's. Speaking of, that's not. I'm not gonna say that. Let's go on to the song of the pod.
Let's do it. So,
the
Jared,
song
one of the reasons why I chose this song this week is because it's a Russian song, even though the title is "Sexy Frau," which is "sexy woman" in German. But there's a lot of Russian influence in Harbin that you can see. This is also just a fun song, and my girlfriend showed it to me. We were hanging out. It was me, her, and her friend, and they were listening to it, and I was like, wait a minute. The title's German? What? And there's some English in the song too.
Yeah.
And the artist, Bianca is her name. She like raps in the song and she sings a little bit. It's really interesting. But what's your take on it, Jared?
Very Russian pop is my take. She's a very sexy Frau, Bianca. She has some very sexy dance moves. But it's it's just like pop music. Like, it sounds like something you might hear at, I don't know, a club or something in Russia, I could imagine. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's generic pop for sure.
Definitely. I mean, I wouldn't be listening to the song if you're looking for some poetic, deep lyrics. But if you're looking for like a fun beat and like kind of a catchy tune, I think it's a good thing to listen to. So
you can put that on at a party and it would be fun.
Oh, definitely. And I have to say, man, I really love listening to Russian music. Like, I like the way it sounds, either sung or rapped. I think it sounds really cool.
Yeah.
And I think like German, the Russian language sometimes has a bad reputation.
Yeah.
I think especially in the States, because most evil villains in any spy movie seem to always be Russian. And so people associate the language with like bad people, but that's obviously not true at all.
Or like mobsters
I think
or
the
something.
language sounds awesome. Right, exactly. So check that out on our YouTube channel, Untranslatable Podcast.
You betcha.
In the Song of the Pod playlist, Sexy Frau by Bianca. Give it a listen. Might get stuck in your head. So it's time for the Chinese word of the pod today, and that is Bing. And Bing means ice in Chinese. Thought it was very fitting for Harbin.
My Spanish for the pod, I would bet, is also very fitting. Escultura. Escultura.
Is that sculpture?
It is, yes. Yes.
Very nice. There were lots of great ice sculptures there, so I think that's very fitting, Jared. Exactly. So to wrap up today's episode about Harbin, definitely go there for the ice festival. Go there for the buildings. Go there for the lights, the lights, the sights, the attractions. But don't forget to walk around the central street. Get yourself a popsicle. I don't care if it's minus 30, minus 40. They are so tasty. It's worth it. Super, super good. So try that out. Harbin is really a very interesting city in terms of comparing other cities in China. And I think that... especially if you're a Westerner or if you've never been to Russia, it's kind of cool to see how Russian culture and Chinese culture mesh together in one city. So it's really great, but don't forget, bring your long johns, bring your warm thermal undies, bring your Costco socks, bring your gloves and scarves because it will get cold there. But it's definitely worth a visit.
And speaking of Chinese culture, don't forget to check out American Factory. And if any of you guys do watch it, whether you're American or Chinese, or you're from some other country, all the various countries out there, I'd be interested to know how people from different countries would view the Chinese or American working culture, or maybe...
I agree.
Or maybe like... if you're from a different culture, which culture do you seem to find yourself siding more with, agreeing more with,
Right.
I'd find that interesting.
I would too. Yeah, so get at us at untranslatablepodcast@gmail.com. If you have any other tips or things to see or to do in Harbin, let us know as well. Untranslatablepodcast@gmail.com. Slide into our DMs on Twitter, Untranslatable1. Let us know what you thought of American Factory, or just tell us what's going on. Jared's good at retweeting, so he might give you a little retweet. I'm completely Twitter illiterate, so pardon me. Otherwise, check out our YouTube channel, Untranslatable Podcast, for songs of the pod, and to see Jared's beautiful face as well. So check it out. So we thank you all. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Let us know how we can make this episode better for you by giving us 5-star reviews on iTunes and Stitcher. We'll also happily shout you out if you want us to do that as well. So, as we say here at the Untranslatable Podcast, Yakuyame, which is gracias, shisha.